So my daughter literally just texted me and said, don't forget to appreciate that there are no women in this video and that women can do amazing things too. So I just want to appreciate, because if I don't, I'll hear about it forever. It's one of the amazing things that my daughter can do. No, I'm just kidding. No, man, it is great. Man, this series has been really good for us. We've been talking about this for 3 weeks. The idea that we're all in, and it matters to our lives to be all in. And it really comes from not so much an athletic thing or not so much a financial thing, but it comes from a quote that I want to unpack again that was really valuable to me, that being all in is kind of an interesting, unique thing. And I heard this phrase, and it was so great when John Eldredge said it. He said, when it comes to Jesus, the only safe place is all in. Now, I don't know about you guys, but when I hear the word all in, I don't think safe, right? I think not safe. Because even those of us who grew up Baptist, right, we still know, right, that poker is what all in is about, right? It's about going all in. It's about risk. It's about I think I have a good hand and I think I can make a profit if I push everything to the middle. So, but generally speaking, going all in is either total confidence, a total lie, or totally stupid. One or the other, right? I mean, you only get a few options when it comes to this idea of going all in, but it's never totally safe, right? It's either totally stupid, a total lie, or it's totally a big risk. I mean, you're just total confidence, but it's never totally safe, because when you push to the middle, you're just risking everything. But when it comes to Jesus, the only safe place is all in. Because everything we don't give Jesus, everything we don't bring to Jesus, everything we don't surrender to him can be used against you. And the enemy will leverage against it. He'll push everything he can, twist everything he can, and leverage it against you to harm you, ultimately to steal and kill and destroy. And so we've been talking about this stuff for a few weeks together. We've been talking about how this whole idea of being all in our faith, because it's the only safe place to be when it comes to Jesus, is all in. First week we talked about how to be all in with our time. We talked about how it's not just about giving Jesus a little bit of our time here and there. It's about inviting him into all of it. It's about saying, God, I want to be all in when it comes to my time. I want to give it all to you, and I want to trust you with it. I want to invite you into it. It's not about being on the greeter team or working in the nursery 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. That's not what giving our time or being all in with our time means. It means inviting Jesus into the everyday decisions, inviting him into our hearts in the process, our motives, redemption of it, just walking in that. Last week we talked about what it means to be all in our story. And man, every single one of us, no matter what our story is, no matter what our background is, we all have parts of our story that we wish we could go back and edit or change or do over. Things we wish we could delete or just forget they ever happened. Every one of us have parts of our story that we wish we could just kind of like push away, and we want to get past it. Like we're trying desperately to get past that thing that we did, or that thing that someone did to us, or just the result of living in this world. Our story dramatically flavors how we live. And we talked about how in Philippians, he tells us that we should forget what is behind and push forward to have what's in the future. And every one of us are like, man, I'd love to forget what's behind. But we talked about the difference between forgetting, which takes work, and ignoring, which doesn't take work. And we can't just ignore our past. We've got to work to forget it, work to have it redeemed, work to have it made whole. And we talked about that last week. And if you missed it, you can always check out past sermons, all this other stuff on something I want you to know about. Take your phone out, would you? We ask everybody like all the time, we want you to mess with your phone during church. Yes, if you get bored, you can listen to Facebook, because you can like scroll through Facebook. I know that you can listen and scroll through Facebook at the same time. Doesn't bother me a bit, okay? So you can play games, do whatever you want to do. Don't play Fortnite with the volume on. That's all I care about, okay? You can play it without the volume on. I do it all the time. So you can put some ear pods, whatever. So here's the deal, though. I want you to take it out and go to the browser that you have and go to ourjourney.news. Now, our regular main site is ourjourney.com. That's kind of like the bulk site. But this one, ourjourney.news, is a special site just for Sunday mornings, okay? So everything you need the portal for Sunday morning is right there. It's like an app on steroids, okay? So everything that you need is at ourjourney.news. You don't have to install anything, you just go there, okay? You can get like past messages like the ones that I just mentioned a second ago about going all in on our story. If you've got parts of your story that you'd like to edit, delete, forget, do over, whatever, you can go to ourjourney.news, watch that story, watch that message, and work through some of that stuff. Other things that are on there's two other things I want you to know about. The first card that you're going to come to when you're sliding around those cards, the very first one is our connection card. And the connection card matters to me. I mean, it doesn't just matter to us. It's not just something that Journey does. We want you to do this. This matters to me because, to be honest with you, Sundays are a blur. By the time I get home, I can barely figure out what's going on. I still got to hang up all these clothes again. You know, like all this stuff that we got to do. And I love talking to you. I love hearing your stories. I love what's going on in your life. It does not matter to me that there's a big crowd of people here. What matters to me is that each one of you are here. And the only way I'm going to remember that is if you would fill out that connection card. So I know we hear about that all the time. You hear about like how important it is. We want you to fill it out every week, even if you've been coming here for 2 months or 2 years or 8 years. It doesn't matter to us. Fill it out every week and hand it in. If you're here for the first time, fill out as much information as you can give us. The more information you give, the more we can sell your card for, okay? No, I'm just kidding. But like the more information you give us, we'll be responsible with it, I promise. But if you're here and you've been coming for more than 1 week, couple weeks, couple months, doesn't matter. Just all you got to put down is your first and last name and your email, and that's it. So that'll just give us an idea that you're here, helps us track and understand, hey, she's been coming, they've been coming, what's going on? You can share prayer requests on there. I know it feels like bookkeeping, but it's not. It's really, really important to us. Other thing you can do on there is scroll over a few and you'll see message notes, and you can follow along with what we're talking about. The passages we put on the screen are up there. There's opportunities for you to like see what the points are and like make some notes, and maybe a reminder or something. You can send them to yourself. So that's a huge help. But the truth is that it's really the very best way that I can help you go all in. This isn't about something we want from you. This is all about stuff we want for you. So make sure that you follow along with that stuff and make those notes, because it matters to me that you walk out of here better, closer to Jesus, more surrendered in your heart than when you walked in, okay? So that's really, really important to us. Your heart is really what matters. And it's really what I mean. When I say we put these messages together and you come in here and you sit down, it's not important that you get entertained. I want you to be entertained. I want you to have fun. Church should be the most fun you have in a week. It should be a sin to make church boring, because we have the most compelling story ever told. You should leave here laughing and having a blast every week. But here's the deal. When we come in here, it's not enough that you're entertained, and it's not enough to me that you're informed. I don't want you to learn more information to stock away in your head. We are educated far beyond our obedience already, okay? We know more than we're ever going to do in our lives as it is. What I want you to do is come in here and understand something that brings you to a place where you open up and surrender a little bit more of your heart, because the only safe place with Jesus is all in when it comes to our heart. Every bit of it surrendered to him. In fact, Proverbs says in Proverbs 4 that we should guard our heart above everything else. That's how important your heart is to God. That above everything else, we should guard your heart, for your heart determines the course of your life. I mean, you know this, right? I mean, the things that you love to do, you do them, right? If you love your job, if you love what you're doing, you're excited to get to it. But at some point in our life, every one of us have gone to a job we didn't really like to do, right? Like my girls will say, once I was like, man, I think we should do something different for school, right? And we're like, well, I mean, why? Because I hate school. Well, you're going to hate school no matter what we do for school, because school's kind of a thing we hate, right? It's just the sort of thing you do. Some of you love school, and I'm sorry about that for you. But the truth is that we don't like the things we don't like to do. And when our heart's not in it, man, it's labor, isn't it? You could have the easiest job in the world, and if your heart's not in it, it's labor 24/7, right? You start dreading it long before you get there. Even if all you do is just move a mouse around and it's really easy and you're like, I couldn't get paid more to do less in my whole life. But when your heart's not in it, man, it's hard to find the purpose and the meaning and value in life. But the truth is that the same thing's true on the other side. When your heart's in it, doesn't matter what you get paid. When your heart's in it, doesn't matter what kind of recognition you get. When you love what you do, you get up and there's drive behind it. Your heart determines the direction, the course of your life. And so you've got to be careful what you give your heart to, don't you? It makes sense that if we give our heart to some stuff that messes us up, man, it's going to be a mess, isn't it? Like, we can give our heart to some pretty crazy things. And once we give our heart to that, man, the course of our life goes off track quick. We can also, probably every one of us, tell some stories of our lives when we've given our heart to something that didn't serve what we wanted to ultimately serve. And we've seen our heart and our life get off track. And that same thing's true about, it talks about our money in Matthew. Matthew's recounting the words of Jesus, and he says, wherever your treasure is, there the desires of your heart will be. Wherever you put your treasures, wherever you put your stuff, that's where your heart's going to wind up going. Because there's a string tied between our money and our heart. You want to see where your money is? You want to see where your heart is? Open up your checkbook, if you still have one of those, right? Open up your bank account, right? And look and see where your money goes. If you want to see where your heart is, look where your money's gone. If you want to make your heart go somewhere new, put your money where you want your heart to go. Your heart will soon be there. Where you invest, your heart will follow. Where your treasure is, there your money is. But here's the principle here. What's so important that we understand is that your heart matters to God, and that your money and your heart are inexplicably tied together. In fact, 1 Timothy says, Paul's telling Timothy, says, the love of money, the fact that we give our heart to money, our love of money is the root of all kinds of evil, right? All kinds of things that you can imagine could happen around money. Every time I consider what's going on in Washington, or every time I consider what happens this, I'm thinking, you know what? Billions and billions and billions of dollars pass between hands and move around. And man, the crazy, ridiculous ways we get motivated by money. It's ridiculous, isn't it? I mean, we get to a place where we'll do anything for money, and then we don't, when other people are doing stuff and they do things that are wrong, you're like, there's money at the heart of that, right? Because the love of money, not money itself, but our heart given to money, is the root of all kinds of evil. When we give our heart to our stuff, man, life gets off track really, really fast. Money is a dangerous thing, because the truth is that money has a connection or a tie or access to our hearts. That's what Jesus is teaching. That's what Paul teaches to Timothy, is that money's unique. Money has some sort of access to our heart that other things don't always have. Not always do all the other things in our world, but our money somehow or another has access to our heart. And if you get nothing else today, if you walk out of here with nothing else, walk out with that. Money is dangerous, not evil. Money is dangerous because it has access to your heart. How you use or misuse money can kind of shift, steal the focus, and turn the motives of your heart. Where your treasure is, that's where your heart is. So we've got to be careful. Now listen, I'm going to warn you, because I don't usually warn you when I make a dumb joke, okay? But I'm going to warn you when I sound intelligent, okay? This is going to sound intelligent. Don't worry, it's just a show, okay? So this guy, Miroslav Volf, see how smart I sound? Because I said his name, and he's really smart. He said, there are two kinds of richness in this life: the richness of having and the richness of being. I want you to let that sit on you for a second, because there are two kinds of richness in this life: the richness of having and the richness of being. Now, even the people who have the richness of having, right, which, remind you, we're all in that story. We're all in the top 5% of wage earners on planet Earth. In fact, we're in the top 5% of wage earners on planet Earth in all of time. So we're really, really rich. And I'm not beating you up with that. I'm not saying that really clearly, but I want you to know something. We're all rich. So we all have the richness of having, but not all of us have the richness of being. And the truth of it is that most of us pursue the richness of being, and we think we'll get there I'll be happy when I arrive at some level of the richness of having, right? I pursue. And then I get to a point where I am, and I'm like, I'll be happy when I get to this place. You know how I know that? Because I do it myself. I hear it in your conversations. You and I talk about it all the time. Well, when we get to this place, when I can just get this level of blank, right? This level of recreation, this much time, this much space. If I can get this much house or this kind of car or that kind of thing, we all get there. We're like, I will be happy, the richness of being. I will be happy when I have this. We think that the richness of being comes from the richness of having, but it doesn't. Because here's what happens. When we get to the richness, when we try to get to the richness of being by the richness of having, we earn and we get and we gather and we pull and we gather, right? And we get there. And what happens is we think we have our stuff. And if we have this much, we'll get to be this. But the truth is, when we gather all that stuff, it's not us that have our stuff. It's our stuff that has us. Attain the richness of being through the richness of having. You'll never be rich. Like, you'll never have the richness of being through the richness of having. It will never work. It has never worked to date. I've known all kinds of people who've gotten to the top of their big pile, and they're like, man, I've made this huge mountain, and I'm happy. I've never known anybody who goes, you know what, this is exactly what I was looking for. Every one of them have gotten to the top of the pile, and have gone, you know what, I thought this would be a lot more fun. I thought this would be a lot more fulfilling than it really is. All I wind up having is I'm the king of a big pile of trash. At the end of the day, that junk doesn't last. And nobody ever thinks it does, right? And that's why Matthew recounts Jesus' words a couple verses earlier than what we were just talking about a minute ago. And he says this, he goes like, build up treasures in heaven where moths don't get to it and destroy them, and rust gets in and like breaks it down, and thieves break in and steal. Like, he's saying, like, don't put up your treasures on earth, build treasures in heaven, because when we do that here, moths get at it, right? Rust gets in and breaks it down. Thieves break in and steal it. All kinds of stuff can happen. Do you realize in the last 30 or 40 years, we've created an entire industry, the storage unit industry, right? Like, don't store up treasures on earth where moth and rust and all this stuff gets to them. But we literally spend in America $17 billion storing our crap, right? It's our stuff, right? It's not the stuff that we could fit in our house. It's the stuff we can't fit in our house. It's not the stuff that we couldn't fit in the junk drawer, right? It won't go in our house, so we'll put it in the junk drawer. It won't go in the house or the junk drawer, so we'll put it in the attic, right? And this is the stuff that doesn't fit in the house or the junk drawer or the attic or under the beds. We got to find somewhere else to put it. It doesn't even fit in the garage. It's got to go in a whole nother location where we pay $65, $75, $100 a month to store our stuff. Here's a $1 million business idea. It's marketed to Christians. You have to take just this much advantage of them. It'll be okay. Don't worry about it. Put a big sign up that says heaven storage, and then put this verse under it. Don't store up your treasures here on earth. Store them up in heaven storage, right? That's a good way to do it. So, but I'm telling you, some of you are going to be a millionaire. All right. So, but you do that stuff. Store up treasures in heaven, on earth, where don't store them here on earth, where moths and rust get them. Store up treasures in heaven, because in heaven, those things don't matter. Now, how do you do that, right? Because there wasn't like an initial public offering of heaven, right? It's not like there's some sort of like some stock you can buy or some sort of thing that you can do to invest in heaven, is there? Because you still got to have all the stuff for this earth, right? You still got to have clothes to wear. You still got to have cars to drive and houses. And how do you do that? I mean, that's a great verse. I get what you're saying. And here's where some of you are like, I know what he's talking about. He's talking about giving to the church. And I knew I should have left my wallet in the car, right? Like, I knew it. It was too good to be true. I like this church, and they were nice, and they're smiling, and they're funny. And now he's going to talk about giving him money. I'll promise you this. Listen, we're going to talk about a little bit about some money, but I want you to know something. It doesn't benefit me at all. I want you to know, this is so important that you know this, that you could go crazy today or whenever, right? You could empty the bank account and put it in the plate, and it won't affect me at all. Not personally. It doesn't affect me one tiny bit. because I have nothing to do with my salary. It comes time to discuss what Jeremy's going to make for a living, and I literally leave the room and I leave our elders to discuss. You can ask any one of them. I leave the room, they have a discussion, I come back in, they tell me what they're doing, and I go and we just go on to the next thing. That's just how it works. So if you don't trust me, at least trust people that are just like you that have nothing to earn in it. So I want you to know that if you give $1 to Journey, it has nothing to do with me. I don't touch it. Those things just go around. It's how it works for us, okay? That's important to me. The second thing I want you to know is that it doesn't matter to me who you give your money to. I don't care. God has paid every one of our bills for the last 9 years, and it's going to continue that way. It's not like you paid it or I paid it. Those things don't matter to us because at the end of the day, we trust God with it, and it's his money. So what I mean by that is if you don't trust me or you don't trust Journey, I get it. I'd worry about it too, and I'd be a little concerned. So if you are that worried about it, I want you to know something. You obey God and give your money to whatever church you want to. It doesn't matter. Pick your mom's church. Pick one off of Google. Pick another church in town. Whatever. It doesn't matter to us because what I don't want giving from you. I want giving for you because here's the thing that matters is that you build up your treasures in heaven means that you invest in things that are eternal. This isn't about giving. Like, it's so funny how often we make this turn in. And we're like, well, you got to do this and you got to do this to fit in. And God likes you more if you do this. And somehow we kind of put this together like you've got to somehow invest in the things that in God himself. And you're like, well, you're not asking me to invest in God. You're asking me to invest in the church. It's his bride. It's his body. So people put all this stuff on it and they really want you to do what they want you to do. And that's not what we want. I really want you to put your treasures in a place where you can wholeheartedly follow God. And when we do that, it's powerful. How is it that we invest in things that are eternal, but we still live in very real lives here on earth? We do that by investing in things that are eternal. And there are only two things that are eternal: God and people. The only two things that are eternal are God and people. Now, does that mean we shouldn't have cars and we shouldn't have, clothes and we shouldn't have all this stuff? No, please have clothes. Please. I'm begging you. In fact, at Journey, we always say this: our only dress code, please do. Okay? So that's what matters to us. Okay? It doesn't matter what you wear. It just matters that you do that. But here's the deal. We got to have stuff, but we invest our heart behind what's eternal, because investing in God teaches our heart to trust him. Notice what I said. Investing our money in God teaches our heart to trust God. Man, so often in the church, we hold giving up like giving is the thermometer of if you're a good Christian or not. It's not about you being a good Christian. It's not about you checking boxes. It's not about you doing what God wants you to do. Those things are great. Don't get me wrong. It's important to behave. It's important to do things that honor God. It's important to be obedient. But far more important than obedience is your motives, your heart behind it. God cares about your heart. And investing in God, choosing to trust him, teaches our heart that God can be trusted. It's one of those things that's just a principle of being trusting with our resources. In fact, what we call first fruits giving has been a part of the church, have been a part of the story of God since the very, very beginning. All the way back in the early parts of the Old Testament, we see people choosing to get all their stuff, and they get the first fruits, the first of the crop, the first of the money, the first of the family, the first of the cattle, all that kind of stuff gets given back to God, because when we put God first in our life, it chooses to trust him with what's left. And so that's why across the board, you generally hear first fruits giving or tithing as a part of church, because it's a choice to trust him with the beginning. Is this principle that I understand that he'll take care of the rest. So trusting God with the first 10% is believing that the rest of our money, the rest of our resources is something that he will honor and take care of us. And it teaches our heart to trust him. The way our family phrases it, and this is just our family story, but we believe, Sheila and I and our kids, we believe that 90% of our income with God is more than 100% without him. We just believe that there's just a way that God can work in that. Now, listen, I'm not pushing that on you. I'm not telling you got to do that to measure up, or that somebody's going to not like you, or we're going to count it against you, or we're going to call you in and do something. That has nothing to do with that. It has everything to do with teaching our hearts to trust God. It's tough to do. So here's what I would consider as a great next step. If you really want to teach your heart to follow God, you want to teach your heart to trust God with that part of it, then begin to break those bonds that money sometimes has in our hearts, and begin to kind of tear at some of that flesh that's grown over that. Here's what I would say. Just take a next step in your generosity. However you want to do it. Right? I mean, maybe you come in and you're like, oh, that was, you're kind of in the tipping mode, man, which I get it. Like you come in and you're like, oh, that was really good. I appreciate that. It was encouraging. Here's a check. Maybe, a few dollars or a specific amount that you give. I don't really care what you give. It has nothing to do with that. But maybe this week, instead of doing like a specific dollar amount, maybe just figure out what percentage of your income that dollar amount is. Okay, so just kind of look at it and go, okay, I give X number of dollars, that's X amount of my paycheck. I'm just going to choose to convert that over to a percentage. Maybe that's all you do. Maybe it doesn't change the dollars at all. You just are aware of where you're currently at. And maybe you just continue to go, man, God, I just want to stretch you. I want to make you as important in my life as my cable bill is. I want to make you as important in my life as my car payment is. I want to make you as important in my life as my house payment is. I want to make you as important in my life as anything else in my life. And it's not about money. It's all about teaching our heart, God, you can be trusted, and I choose to trust you. Man, it's really important stuff. But it's not the whole story. Man, we love to tell you that stuff, right? I mean, preachers love to go, the only way to do this is to do this. You just do it and be quiet and don't ask questions. That's not it. It's about investing in God because it teaches our heart that God can be trusted. And the second part of that is the same thing. Investing in heaven means investing in people. People matter to God. I want you to know something. You are deeply loved by God. I don't mean that as some generic thing like Jesus loves you, and I mean that he just loves you like he loves everyone. This isn't like preschool graduation. It's that time of year. Remember preschool graduation? Some of you have some preschoolers and you just can't wait because your little kid is going to get up there with every other kid who drools all day, right? And walk across the thing, and you're going to celebrate and take pictures, and he's awesome. You are amazing, just like every other kid. This isn't like preschool graduation or the participant trophy. Right? Like this isn't going out there and like, you're amazing. Here's a trophy for you. You did nothing to deserve it, right? This isn't like that, okay? God loves you so much that he didn't just kind of say, hey, I love you. He didn't feel it. He didn't think it. He did something about it. God loved you so much that he stepped out of heaven. God became man. And then not just became man, he limited himself. Philippians chapter 2, of the independent use of his deity. He gave up his God card. It says that he didn't consider equality with God something that he had to grasp or work for, but he became obedient to death, even death on a cross. He loves you so much that he didn't just talk about it or feel it or think it. He did something about it, and he gave his life for you because you matter to God. You matter to God. Your heart matters to God. This stuff changes everything. So trusting God with people, beginning to invest your life, your resources in people, when you choose to trust God with people, it teaches your heart to value the things that God values. And there is no telling what can happen when that happens. Over the years, in the last 8 years and almost 9 years now as a church, and Sheila and I moved here, we've had hundreds of times where we've hit bumps, right? There's been not enough money. There's been not enough this. There's too many of that. What's going on with this? We're struggling with something. And the thing that we've said to each other, thing that we've said back and forth in our elder team, back and forth to leaders, most of you have heard me say this at some point or another in the last 8 years, is this two things. If we will do what God calls us to do, and we'll love God's people along the way, at least when we get to the end of it, we won't look back and have something to regret. Because God's people matter to him. That stuff really does matter to him. It means everything. People matter to God. And when we invest in people, when we care about people, we help people take their next step toward Jesus. The truth is that we wind up understanding and beginning to value the things that God values. And when we do that, there's no telling what we can accomplish. It's pretty powerful stuff. So this week, I want you to consider, what are you going to take a next step in your investment in people? I want you to think about it this way, that love isn't something that you feel or think. Love is something you do. After Easter this year, we're going to read a book together. Our whole church, read a book together, get in some small groups. We're going to do a series called Love Does. It's good. It's a book by a guy named Bob Goff. I love Bob Goff. He is a blast. In fact, if you've ever read 2 pages of anything Bob Goff has written, you too will love Bob Goff. He is the most lovable, amazing person, because his definition of love isn't think, feel. It's do. It's go do something, because love does. And we're going to talk about it, how to live that stuff out. But we can't wait until after Easter to start doing love stuff, right? So here's the thing I want you to think about this week. See a need, meet a need. Just remember that. Now you're like thinking, oh, well, I don't know if I have enough money to see a need that's huge and meet a need. Just meet the need that you can. All you have to do this week is see a need and meet the need that you can meet. Now, that might be financial. You might see somebody who needs some money, and you might give them some money. It might be $10, might be $100, might be $1,000. That's on you. It's up to you how you live this out. It might be that they don't need a single thing for money. They just need your attention. Man, so many times we're hurting. And when somebody goes, hey, how you doing? You're like, I'm fine. Maybe it's just calling their bluff and going, are you really fine? Can we talk? Can I help? Are you really fine? Can we talk? Can I help? Because caring for someone, praying with them, loving them, hugging them, smiling at them makes all the difference in the world when somebody's hurting. It really matters more that you see the need in their life and meet it. Because when we begin to invest our life in people, it teaches us to value the things that God values. You know, this seems unrelated, but you ever play this game? This is Monopoly, for those of you who can't see it. Maybe some of you played it way back in the day, and it was like a great game for you, and then it almost cost you your marriage, so you quit playing it. Because Monopoly is one of those games where you unpack the board. You see in a minute, if you haven't ever played Monopoly, why it could cost your marriage. And the idea of the thing is to go around the board, right, and pass go as many times as you can, and collect $200. And when you land on these different areas, like you've got the Mediterranean Avenue and Baltic, or Oriental and Vermont and Connecticut, when you land on these different real estate opportunities, you buy one, right? And once you buy one, you can collect rent when your family or your friends land on it, right? And if you get a Monopoly and you get all the blue ones or all the brown ones, you get more rent for that one they land on. The goal is to create a monopoly and get to a point where they can't pay you the rent and you get to take everything they own. And then you get to annihilate all of your... See why it costs marriages? The goal is to go around as many times as possible, right? You just keep going around and going around until you get as much stuff as possible, and you've eliminated all of your opponents and you're on the top of the monopoly pile, right? This is the goal. Same thing in life, right? Keep going around. Not life, the game. Life, it's the same thing in life, right? We want to go around the circle as many times as possible. I want to gather as much stuff as I can. I want to get it all together. I want to get all the houses. I want to get all the cars. I want to get all the clothes. I want to get all the stuff. And we think that if we have the richness of having, that we'll have the richness of being. But we wind up going around the thing. We go around the thing. We go around the thing. And eventually, you win the game, and then guess what? It all goes back in the box. You just fold all this stuff up, and you put it away. Then you put the lid on, and it's over. And then you make that funny noise. But the truth is that we struggle with this. Isn't that it? I mean, for us, it's not always Monopoly. It's our stuff. Isn't that what's going to happen? I mean, at some point, my wife, maybe, my kids, maybe my grandkids. At some point, somebody's going to get all my stuff together, right? They're going to fold up my shirts. They're going to put them in a box, right? Or they're going to stuff them in a bag. They're going to sell the cars, right? They're going to sell the houses. They're going to split up the money. At the end of the day, it all goes back in the box. So really, the thing that we have struggle with, and this is what Jesus was saying, is when we sell our hearts to this stuff, whether it's our clothes or our cars or our houses or our security or all of our stuff, when we sell our hearts to that, and it all just goes back in the box. Invest your heart and your resources in God and his people. We call it the kingdom. Invest it in God and people. And at least when you look back on it, you won't have regrets. Because at the end of the game, it all goes back in the box.